Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is The Story, a story of so-called collusion between top Trump campaign officials and a Russian lawyer that has the president's critics gleeful tonight. So, is it? Let's hit the pause button as Jonathan Turley says there is, quote, no clear criminal act in such a meeting. He joins us in just a moment with his legal opinion on all of this. But first, let's get the story from Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hi, Martha. We found 8 examples over the past year where members of the Trump campaign or Trump administration flatly denied having any contact with Russians trying to meddle in the election, including Donald Trump Jr. telling the New York Times in March, quoting, "Did I meet with people that were Russian? I'm sure I did, but none that were set up, none that I can think of at the moment, and certainly none that I was representing the campaign in any way." But now we know that in June of 2016, Trump Jr., representing the campaign, did have a meeting set up with Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya. On Saturday, Trump Jr. said the meeting dealt primarily with a program about the adoption of Russian children. On Sunday, he amended his statement saying the Russian lawyer was supposed to have proof that Russia was donating to the Democratic National Committee and supporting Hillary Clinton, but her information turned out to be vague and ambiguous. Today, Trump Jr. said there was no inconsistency in his statements, tweeting, quote, "Obviously, I'm the first person on a campaign to ever take a meeting to hear info about an opponent. Went nowhere, but had to listen." In fact, Trump supporters say it is routine for political campaigns to gather opposition research. Here's Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
The only thing I see inappropriate about the meeting was the people that leaked the information on the meeting after it was voluntarily disclosed.
Voluntary disclosure, she's referring to White House senior advisor Jared Kushner and former campaign chief Paul Manafort, who also attended the meeting with the Russian lawyer and disclosed it on government documents. But critics say the meeting between Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer goes to the very heart of the Russian collusion argument, proving that some in the Trump campaign were willing to accept Russian help. Though it's worth noting the Russian lawyer who met with Trump Jr. is a big advocate of overturning the Magnitsky Act, which bans Russian children from being adopted by American families. Martha.
Trace, thank you very much. Here now, Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law attorney and George Washington law professor. Jonathan, welcome back. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
You wrote a piece on this today, and once again, you are sort of saying, you know, whoa, hold on a minute and don't get over your skis on this. Why?
Well, it's odd. It's like we have this giant Rorschach test where everyone sees ink blots and sees crimes everywhere. I mean, the criminal code has defined elements to it. You just don't find these ambiguous crimes. Some people have said this could be treason. For the love of God, treason is defined in the Constitution. This is not treason. Other people have said this could be a Logan Act violation. Well, Logan Act has been used once in 200 years and is facially unconstitutional. One said, well, if you take things of tangible value under the campaign laws and treat information like that, then maybe you have a campaign contribution violation. Well, yeah, but we haven't seen that done. You could also treat it like a panda and say it's an endangered species violation. But courts haven't done that. So I think that people need to take a breath. You know, this was a meeting where someone said they had evidence of a possible crime by the opponent of the Trump campaign. They met with this person. I think a lot of people in the city view that as naive. I think a lot of people say, my God, why didn't you use a surrogate, which is how it's done in Washington? But that itself is not a crime.
So, you know, and what you just touched on is what has been discussed a lot, which is the fact that this is a big moment in the campaign. It's shortly after Donald Trump secures the nomination. This is a very high-level meeting. This is Paul Manafort, the campaign manager, Jared Kushner, very close advisor to the president and his son-in-law, and his son, Donald Trump Jr. So these were big guns at this meeting, and they claim that they didn't know why they were even there, that, you know, they had just been asked to join in this meeting. Do you buy that? And is there any significance to who was there?
Well, frankly, it does strike a lot of folks in the Beltway as sort of amateur hour. People like the Clintons are notorious for using surrogates. People like David Brock, who's rather notorious, but lots of other people serve as surrogates or buffers to campaigns. It's very rare that you see something like this happen, but the fact that they're high-ranking, the fact that they met with this lawyer, doesn't constitute a crime unless we start to broaden the definition of criminal conduct. And what I've said to a lot of my friends who do legal analysis is this really the world you want to live in, where we broaden the definition of crimes so far that most any conversation could be a criminal act? That's a very dangerous world to live in. But more importantly, if information is now a thing of tangible value under federal campaign laws, then the Clinton campaign could be charged with the same type of offense, and a wide variety of other campaigns could be charged.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a point in which you have to show some element of maturity and stand back and tell people, look, this is worthy of investigation, but you shouldn't suggest that this is a clear evidence of a criminal act.
I've been looking at some of the tweets from other former campaign operatives for other campaigns. They said, yes, we do lots of opposition research, but not with foreign entities, not with someone from another country. First of all, it doesn't appear to be true based on the Ukraine connection that we heard about today on the DNC side. But is that true? Does it complicate this legally that it was a meeting with someone from another country who may have a tie to the Kremlin, as most people do, in some tangential way or otherwise?
No, it's only if we get more information, there could be some wire that's tripped. But the fact that you've received information from a foreign source is not itself any type of crime unless you start to radically broaden the campaign finance rules. The fact is campaigns and aides meet with foreign leaders and nationals all the time. They share information about trade and other issues. Sometimes they share information that runs against their opponent in a campaign. That is fairly routine. Now, what is not routine is to have high-ranking people like this meet with someone without knowing the nature of the meeting. That was not a smart move to make, but it doesn't make it a crime. And so people have got to be very careful. If this is a crime, then a wide array of contacts that routinely occur between politicians and foreign nationals would also be a crime. And then you raise serious free speech and associational concerns under the Constitution.
Jonathan Turley, thank you very much. Always good to see you, sir. So here now, the possible political fallout here. Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary and brand new Fox News contributor. Welcome to you. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, a Republican pollster and columnist at the Washington Examiner, and Zach Buchanan, a Democratic strategist and former senior DNC advisor. Welcome to all of you. Ari, let me start with you. What's your take on this? And also, sub-question here, the forms that weren't filled out, because they've tripped themselves up in many ways by not coming forward and saying, oh, this meeting on this day, this meeting on that day, here's what it was about.
Well, one, take a deep breath. I do think that is the best advice for how to get through any of these. But I'll make two points beyond that. One, I don't think Team Trump has handled this very well. All the issues relating to Russia, they keep having to correct their forms. They keep having to remember things that they previously forgot. The best course is always, when you get hit with something like this, disclose it all voluntarily, upfront yourself, frame it yourself so your critics can't misframe it, and get it out there. That's number one. They haven't done that. Number two, people have to be precise in their language about what collusion means. There's a huge difference between having a meeting with a foreign official to ascertain if there is a fact that you can use in a campaign. That is entirely different than working with a foreign nation to traffic in stolen material, in this case, the emails from the DNC and from John Podesta. That would be a very troublesome collusion. Perceiving a fact about a matter from a foreign official, I don't know that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, and that didn't even take place here.
Zach Buchanan, let me bring you in. A lot of talk in a lot of places today about this being collusion, this being the smoking gun. What we're hearing so far tonight is that it isn't. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, I don't think it's a smoking gun, and I don't know whether the act itself is criminal or not. I actually think that is less important than what we have established with this meeting. Donald Trump himself, Mike Pence himself, said that none of his campaign officials met with Russian officials regarding campaign activities, and that just turns out not to be true. And it's not only not true with Donald Trump Jr., there are 5 other senior Trump officials who also have met with Russian officials and have either lied about it or have conveniently forgotten about it. And so what I think that is the most significant thing that we have from this particular meeting is that we have the first public evidence that the Trump campaign senior officials, 3 of them, not only met with a Russian official with a connection with the Kremlin, but tried to coordinate their efforts in order to influence the election and swing it their way. And that's a pretty significant development.
The latter part of what you said, we do not know as evidence of what we've heard so far. Kristen, what's your take?
I think there are two big pieces to this. I think first is that this is the strangest cover-up for what may well not be a crime at all. There are all of these allegations that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and of course, no concrete evidence that it has happened. But there have been so many things that have been done that feel like a cover-up, really unnecessarily. I think Ari was right that this drip, drip, drip has not served the Trump administration well. And what it's done has put a lot of Trump administration officials who may well be trying to do the right thing in a tough position. You have, for instance, Vice President Pence, who was told, look, none of these folks have had meetings with the Russians. You can go out, put your credibility on the line and say, this is nothing. And that's the reason why Mike Flynn got shown the door, not just because he forgot that he had some conversations with some Russians, but because he misrepresented it to people inside the administration. Now, nobody's going to be showing Donald Trump Jr. the door. He's got a pretty close relationship with the president, of course. But it does put a lot of these administration officials in a tough position when they come out, they say one thing categorically, and then a couple of days, weeks, or months later, new information contradicts them.
I mean, at a moment when they want to have good takeaway from the G20, when they want to be talking about health care, and then that's the big question, Ari, and let me put the last question to you here, is whether or not these are rookie mistakes, or whether there's something more there, and whether they, the fact that they keep forgetting the Russian part of of these claims on the forms, or did they think that it was going to look bad, so you better not put it on the form? I mean, these are outsiders. We knew that from the beginning, right? And they're used to doing business the way they want to do business.
I suspect if there was a nefarious French connection, they'd have forgotten all the French people too, and we'll be learning that now as well. I mean, the problem with these forms, by the way, is you have to list every contact you've had with a foreign national, and contact is not defined. So when I had to fill mine out, I was a Capitol Hill staffer. I really didn't have any. If you're an international businessman like Donald Trump or Jared Kushner, you've met, or Paul Manafort, you've met hundreds, if not more than that.
But they know who they met with during the campaign. I mean,
no, but the question is, it's not just the campaign, it's who have you met with. That's what goes on the forms. And I think it was a 3 or 5 year period.
Was last June.
Well, and should they have remembered it? If it was something, yes, they should have. That was my point earlier. But I'm also making the point, it's not necessarily a sign of wrongdoing if you get a form wrong. Now, it looks bad. Everybody gets drip, drip, drip. But what you have to separate is it a mistake or is it criminal? And this is Jonathan's broader point, which we should all take to heart. We do not want to criminalize the normal mistakes that people make. That is not the purpose of government. It's not the purpose of prosecution. And this is what Bob Mueller is going to have to wrestle with.
And unfortunately, opposition research, everybody wants to dig up something on the candidate they're running against. It's part of it's in the air that you breathe in these campaigns, for better or worse. Thanks, you guys. Great to see you all tonight.